And you'll see the recording button on as well. So again, if you're joining, hi, my name is Marisa Melendres. I'm an academic advisor in the School of Natural Sciences. Today we are hosting our School of Natural Sciences faculty panel, and we do have 3 special guests that will be joining us. Today we do have Dr. Bennett, Dr. Ghosh, and Dr. Menke today talking to us. So we appreciate taking your time during your busy schedule with class and family and other obligations to come speak with our students as well. And I know we just have an hour, and I want to make sure we have a couple of times, so we'll probably stick at the 45-minute mark. That way we can wrap up with questions and answers in case you all need to run off and teach as well. So I'll go ahead and get started, and we'll go ahead and have a first question. So if each of you can start by telling us, introducing yourselves, telling us about yourself and how you got started at UC Merced. So if you want to have, I can have Dr. Bennett go first.
Sure, yeah. Well, my first name's Gordon, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Life and Environmental Sciences. I think a lot of undergrads may not know that department exists because we actually service the bio undergrad major, so a lot of our faculty participate in that. And I'm a researcher and an educator, and I teach general biology, evolution, and a few other courses, including a new entomology class, which is on insects. I run a lab with about three undergraduate students, and we do various work on how microbes and insects interact with each other. I grew up in the University of Vermont. I grew up in Vermont, and I did my undergrad in my hometown. I was actually a first-generation college student, which I'm happy to talk about more later. And then I had a long path getting to UC Merced, which I can explain a little bit more later. But that's me in a nutshell.
I apologize, I was muted. Dr. Ghosh, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Sai. I am a professor of physics. And I started at UC Merced at the very beginning. My husband and I came here as founding faculty in 2006. We are both in physics. For me, the path was relatively straightforward. I was finishing up at UC Santa Barbara as a postdoctoral researcher, something you do after you've completed a PhD. And Merced was just coming online. And, you know, it was a tremendous opportunity for us to kind of be at this level, at the starting point where we could have a say in how this new campus was going to grow. So for us, it was a really fun time. I'm not sure I'd want to go through it again, but I'm really glad I went through it. And it's a great thing for us to kind of see how it's grown from 3 buildings to this huge campus. So I am very, very fond of the campus, and I just love my time here.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. And then Dr. Menke, would you like to introduce yourselves as well?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Eric. I'm a chemistry professor. I'm teaching general chemistry this semester, Chem 2. I've also been here a little while. I started in 2008, and I guess in part because, so I did my graduate work at UCI. I'm actually from Colorado, New Mexico, but I came out to California for grad school. When I was a grad student, I heard about this shiny new place that was starting up in Merced, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I looked into it and ended up getting a job here, which is pretty cool. So.
Awesome, thank you. And so we'll go ahead and start off with the questions here. So if each of you can kind of tell us about your research interests as well, and how students can participate in your lab, or what you're looking for students to be involved in research and in labs, such as your labs as well. And so I'll go ahead and, if Dr. Ghosh, if you would like to go first.
Sure. I work on nanomaterials, and I specifically focus on how to use these new types of materials to design, the current generation photovoltaic devices like solar cells, as well as sensors and such application materials. So although I'm in physics, my research has become fairly materials science / engineering. I collaborate a lot with engineering faculty. I am one of the faculty associated with the research centers, MESES and CCBM, which offer fellowships to undergraduate researchers to do research in their lab of choices. So I am actually very involved with recruiting undergraduates to do research, not just in my lab, but in any lab that they would like to, while getting paid for it, which is, always fun. Um, my advice for doing research, either in my lab or any faculty, is if you want to do research, you could not start earlier. There is no such thing as it's too early. Just Google the person or the research area that you would like, and then just go talk to them. Right now, you don't even have to go. You can just email them and say, hey, can I have a short Zoom meeting? Or just do it by email. Just get started. And then you will work with the grad students and they will take you through research. It's a long-term thing, but most of our faculty on campus are very aware that undergraduate students have courses. They have a lot of other stuff going on. So we don't expect you to kind of, come and do a lot of research. For both of us, the idea is to get you used to this other kind of work where there is no immediate deadlines or something, to learn what research is, how to do it. The scientific aspect was actually the part that will come easiest to you. You will learn that, but just get started. And if you need more information about how to apply for these fellowships, just, through Maricela, just get in touch with me and I will forward you the applications and things that go out. And these centers are good because then you don't have to deal with faculty directly if some students don't feel comfortable. So you apply through them and then they put you in touch with the labs that align with your choice of research area.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Dr. Bennett, would you like to add anything?
Sure, yeah. As I mentioned, we do work generally on insects and microbial interactions. And one of the fundamental questions we're just interested in, we use insects as models, but we really approach the sort of broad idea that most organisms, or most humans included, interact with microbes and we rely on them for health. And we use these systems to try to tease apart questions of how these things come together as a single healthy functioning organism. That said, I have a long history of doing research in places like Hawaii and just doing basic biodiversity discovery and looking for new species. And we actually have described about 24 new species that we've published over the years. And a lot of that work has been done by undergrad volunteers in my lab or paid researchers who come in and just have a general interest in biology and biodiversity. Generally speaking, I'm always soliciting undergrads to join the lab to do projects of their interest. And my advice for students who are interested in finding research opportunities is, if you're taking a class in particular and you're really excited about it, just approach the professor. That usually have some kind of opportunity, or they're willing to work with students to integrate them into their lab. They may not be advertising, but if there's just, you think that you'd like to work with a person, you think it'd be a good environment for you, and you're interested in their research in any capacity, just approach them. Most faculty are really interested to talk about their research and get people on board with it. And there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think for my lab and some of the interactions I've had, we always try to get students trained in some basic skills and encourage them to develop their own research that they can carry forward. And I've had a number of students actually publish things, undergrads publish things in their experience in my lab, which is really exciting, rewarding for everybody. And also it's really great for a CV to do the research, and especially if you have any kind of products that come out of it, it really puts you up and above, I think, any potential competition in a job market.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. Dr. Menke, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I guess my research has changed a lot over my years here, which maybe isn't so good for me. I get distracted easily and kind of just look at new shiny things. When I started here, I was very interested in materials for solar cells. I don't really do that work anymore. More recently, my work has been more on some computational modeling and fundamental studies of potential battery electrolytes. So I have 2 graduate students and an undergrad working on that right now. And then the last couple of years, I've actually started branching out into education research, which is kind of at the crossroads between chemistry and psychology and some cognitive science. And that's also been really fun and interesting. And I have worked with undergrads in that as well. And So for the chemistry, it's a little hard right now, right? Because we can't have undergrads in the labs. And so I don't have a lot of stuff to do for undergrads. I think it's probably easier to find something to do with the computational people right now than lab researchers. But for the education research, I have worked with, and I'm currently working with, and in the future will be continue to work with undergrads. One thing that I don't think Gordon or Sai mentioned that another resource to be aware of is the UROC office, right? They have a kind of central listing of all kinds of fellowships and research opportunities, not just on campus, but other places as well, like summer REUs and stuff. And so definitely check them out and keep checking them out because their website updates pretty regularly. So.
Awesome, thank you. And then next question here. What are some good academic behaviors to be successful in each of your classes? Can you talk about the classes that you teach or have taken as well, as even in your previous experience as a student? But I think in this moment, I think with the virtual reality too, what are some good practices that students can start practicing and putting in place so that way they can be successful in each of your courses? And so I'll go ahead and I'll have Dr. Bennett go first.
Sure. Here's a couple of things that worked really well for me and I think helped students be successful. And the first one is just finding a space to work, I think, where you're mentally engaged with what you're trying to do. I know that's very challenging in this environment that we're in currently, but whether it be a physical or sort of a mental, psychologically free space where you can focus on what you're trying to do, because it's very hard to learn and do deep study if you're in a constantly distracted environment or you're not comfortable, I think. A couple other things is that you really got to read. I think I can't stress this enough. Read as much as you can, read it as carefully as you can, read it as critically as you can. So allow yourself to absorb the information, but also let it shape your opinions and how you interact with that information. And along those lines, you also have to write, I think, and practice writing. You gotta learn to find your voice and find your ideas and philosophy and how you access your knowledge and communicate that. I think writing is one of the most important tools you can develop as an undergraduate and also as a learner. And it really allows you to communicate your thoughts and your ideas in a long-term way. You can have conversations with people, but writing is kind of a good way to summarize and to put that down for the long term. Obviously, you submit assignments that are writing. And then one final thing along those lines is find time to just sort of get space. So you have space to think and process, whether it be, I like to go running or find some kind of activity that just allows you to get away and put everything in context, because it can get very stressful and distracting and hard to process all the stuff that's going on at school and in life. So finding just a space to think and relax as best you can. I think all those things are very important.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. Dr. Menke?
Yeah, so I would definitely echo, especially the third thing that Gordon says. I guess maybe I was going to frame it a little bit differently and kind of point out or posit the value of taking breaks. You can't, right? No human is made to work 24/7. The brain doesn't work that way, and so you have to step away and decompress and let things go before getting back to it. Two other things I guess I would throw out there. One is to do things in little chunks, right? Do a little bit every day instead of trying to do all of it at once on one day. And so, spend 10 minutes reading just that one page instead of trying to read the whole chapter. And, work on just one problem instead of trying to get through all of the homework. That's a little bit harder. It takes a little bit more focus and kind of knowing yourself than just waiting for the deadline to do all of it. But it works out better for you in the long run to do things in small little bits. And then the third thing, which is, I think, probably pretty hard right now, but is to find other people to work with. It's always easier to kind of spread the load in some ways, right? Then you're depending on other people to help you, keep you on task, but they're also, you're helping them stay on task. And so that teamwork effort of it I think helps just kind of keep focus and keep people a little bit more motivated.
Thank you, Dr. Menke. Dr. Ghosh?
Yeah, I second everything they have said so far. I have been teaching for the past few years Physics 8 and Physics 9, which are the first semester physics courses. So I am mostly meeting all our undergraduate students as freshmen. So I have the things I tell them in my class are at the beginning is, high school's over. And being a parent myself of a 10-year-old, I can see how school is very regulated, right? You have your teacher plans everything out, you have deadlines, there is a lot of oversight. And here suddenly you are left with me. I'm not gonna, hunt you down if you don't submit homework on time. None of it. Attendance is not required. Your parents will not hear from me if you don't show up to class like ever. And they shouldn't at all anyway, because I never used to show up to my undergrad class. But it takes a little bit of time to get used to this, motivating yourself, keeping yourself on track. Nobody likes that. So make a calendar, plan your day, and keep in mind, this is where you take ownership of what you're doing, right? No one's going to scold you or yell at you, but you kind of have to meet those deadlines and all of that. The other thing I would mention is when you do homework or sit for an exam or any of that, understand that you are not supposed to know the answer right away when you look at the problem. It's okay to say, I have no idea how to do this, and then spend time trying to figure it out. Don't ever feel like I looked at all 10 of my homework problems, I don't know what's going on. Of course, that is the point. It's a way to teach you. Not everything is a test except the tests. So teach yourself through homework. That's the other thing I see between school and college. In college, see how short a time we have to lecture you. There is no way you'll understand everything. I didn't. I'm shocked at anyone who does. So it's okay to feel confused. Go back and go over your notes. What they said, read over and over again. And don't ever feel like you're the one being left behind. Some of us are better at projecting confidence. You're not. Take it from us. We see the other side. Everybody is suffering. Everybody feels left behind. It is a process, right? It's not a result. So give yourself time and space, plan well, submit things on time, and strategize. Look at how your grade is broken up. If something is not worth as much points as the other, give attention where it needs to be. Right? Don't fuss about missing 1 point in homework or your lab when you can use that time to prepare for the midterm. So always plan and communicate with us. Anything comes up, especially now, don't worry about it. None of us have anywhere to go. We'd be happy to look at emails and help you out in any way. So anything comes up, let us know.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. And I think Dr. Menke has something to add.
Yeah, so just real quick, Sai kind of reminded me of two things that this seems like a good place to mention. One big difference, I think, between college and high school is, for the most part in college, we don't actually care if you get the right answer so much as we care if you're following the process. And right, we're more interested in something deeper than just the right answer. I don't think students really understand that because, right, you've spent 18 years of your life being told that the right answer is just the thing that we care about. But in college, we care more about, can you follow the process? Because at this point, a lot of things we do don't actually have answers, or we're trying to find the answers. And so it's a totally different perspective. And I think students have a really hard time kind of making that switch and understanding that. And I had another thing, but I don't remember what it was now, but it was super deep, and I'm really sad that I don't remember what I was going to tell everybody. Man.
Enjoy the days when you guys can remember things, because this is coming. We all can barely remember 2 things at a time.
And Dr. Bennett, you had something to add.
Yeah, there's one more thing I wanted to add that I think really helped me reduce the amount of stress and struggle I had as an undergrad, is realize you have your syllabus at the beginning of a class. And I think we've heard a lot about planning, and that's great. And that's exactly what you should be doing, but start early. So if you have that big paper due in December, don't leave it to November, right? some classes give you interim deadlines to help guide that process, but generally speaking, you're expected to, and it's going to be easier for you, it's going to be less stressful if you start that stuff early. If you leave it till the last minute, it's going to be very hard and very upsetting. It's going to be lots of tears. I think spread it out. You have the whole semester to make use of that timeline as best you can for all the assignments that you have. And you know you have them because the syllabus should be very carefully outlined for all of your classes. So rely on that, start early.
Dr. Menke?
I remembered the other thing. The other thing I was going to say is I find that a lot of students worry about the wrong things. And kind of as an example, so I teach general chemistry, and I know this is probably true in physics as well. I have a lot of students who worry about the calculus. And they're like, oh, I can't do calculus. I'm only math 21, or I'm only math 11. Calculus is so hard. But really, most of them don't have very good algebra skills, and they can't even get to the calculus part because their algebra is not good enough. And so I think that, right, they're so busy worrying about the calculus that they don't practice the things that they kind of have some control over and can improve. So yeah, kind of be cognizant of what you really should worry about and what maybe is not actually that important.
Thank you. So this kind of ties into my next question here. What advice would you give to a student that is performing well versus a student that might be struggling in your course? So we'll go ahead and have Dr. Ghosh go first.
A student who's performing well, if these were normal times, in my classes, they're big classes, I actually formed little groups, and I formed groups of 3 with one student who is strong in this area, which usually means they have taken AP Physics before. The students I've found who are good in Physics 8, 9 are always students who are seeing this material for the second time. It is impossible to be, very, very good when you are seeing it for the first time. I mean, I wouldn't be. So normally I group them up. So the students who are performing well, usually my advice to them is, keep doing what you're doing. But I noticed that other than perhaps being more familiar with the subject, they are the students who are, as Gordon and Eric said, they plan early. They are not the ones who start working on the paper in November when it's due in December. They are the ones who tell me early on that, Professor, I have a family wedding. This is days before pandemic. I'll be gone this week of November. Can I submit this later? And that time I'm like, sure, yeah. Students who are not performing well, and I have found these are students who either feel like they will not perform well because of what Eric said, they feel they lack the skills, and I point out to them, you are here to learn them. You're not here because you're supposed to know them already, then what am I here for? So I tell them that you can do it, but first step is you got to do it. Just, go in, don't be worried about what you don't know or what you cannot do. And the second group of them are students who don't plan well, who let either because they don't like the subject, which can happen, but you have to take it, so you might as well do the best. It's the planning, who leave homework till the last minute. Although the syllabus says you're supposed to spend this many hours per week in homework and it's supposed to challenge you, they don't. And that adds up. Not only do they fall behind, so I have never found students who are intellectually lagging. It's just students who need to spend a bit more time and not worry that they are not cut out for it.
Dr. Menke?
So I honestly don't know what I would tell someone who's doing well in my class. I wouldn't have advice for them. I'd be like, good job. You're doing great. I keep doing it. For someone who's doing or having trouble or struggling, I think maybe I'll disagree with Sai a little bit. Although I think I agree for the most part. I think that I would recommend that they take a look at how they're spending their time. I think a lot of students might be spending time on something, but not actually productively. And right, spending time on something versus productively spending time on something, it's a skill that takes time and practice, and knowing how to do that is hard. And a lot of people don't learn how to do that in high school. And I think that the people that do learn how to do that in high school have a kind of a step up on the people who don't. I was one of those people as an undergrad. I had no idea how to study. And so I struggled a lot as an undergrad, figuring out how to spend my time instead of just spending more time. And so, you know, if you are struggling, and I guess in some respects, it depends if you're struggling in my class or struggling in all of your classes. You know, if you're just struggling in my class, but you're doing really well in all of the other classes, that probably says more about my material and how well I'm motivating you than anything. But if you're struggling in all your classes, then it's probably because you're not effectively and efficiently using your time, would be my guess. And so talk to people about how to do that and, you know, work on that aspect of it.
Dr. Bennett? You're muted, Doctor.
There we go. I think that last piece of advice was really great. I think I have the same advice for both groups of students. I think you should learn your abilities, and that means what skills do you have? What skills do you need to develop? You know, what should you be prioritizing? Also, an important factor of that is, when should you be working? When are you going to get your best, most focused, most productive time done? It might not be at midnight, it might be at 10 a.m., etc. Even if you're a struggling student now, that's going to be very important. But if you're a good student now, or you're doing really well in my class, you might hit the wall in another class, and you'll have to sort of reevaluate your skills and your abilities and what you need to prioritize. As an example, I know there's physics and chemistry. I really struggle with those classes, and the first times I took them, I often did very poorly on the first exam, and you know, this was intermittently throughout my entire undergrad career, and I had to sit down and just evaluate what I was incapable of doing and what I needed to do to fix it. And oftentimes that would take priority over something I was better at, and I could actually let that fall behind a little so I could balance that learning environment. And I think you have to be doing that every year, because every year you come back to undergrad, your environment's very different. The courses you're taking are very different. The people you're interacting is very different. There's just always that need to evaluate and you know, evaluate yourself. So I think that's advice for both groups. And then along the same lines, whether you're doing well or you're doing poorly, you should interact with the faculty that are teaching the class. You should interact with the TAs. I've had a lot of really great students that come in my courses, they get A's, and then a year or two later, they write me a letter, they ask for a letter of evaluation, and I don't know who you are, and that's really hard to write a useful letter for students that do well, and I don't know you. So I think you should take the time to personalize your learning and interact with the people who are teaching you, even if you're doing well. And especially if you're doing poorly, a lot of times those interactions really helped me figure out what I think Dr. Menke was talking about is, what should I be focusing on so I can do better in this class? What can I clear away, and what's the heart of what I need to learn? And I think making those personal connections and getting that guidance is really valuable, and it personalizes the learning, which means it's more impactful, and it sticks with you a little bit better, and you can also get help in strategizing. So that's my advice.
Thank you. And next question here. How would you have prepared before graduating from undergraduate? What resources would you have taken advantage? And I think even speaking now with UC Merced, what resources have you all recommended to your students in your classes? So I'll go ahead and have Dr. Menke go first.
I don't know. I've definitely recommended students do UROC, or at least look into UROC. That's a really good resource that we have. I don't really know what I did as an undergrad. I don't think I did much on campus except for just classes. I didn't do research. I didn't do clubs. I basically went to class and then I went to work. And so I'm sure there were resources that I would have benefited from, but I don't know what they were. And so I don't know really what they would be now for students. I guess one thing maybe I would suggest is that one aspect of, you know, your future that is often overlooked at in college are the soft skills, right? How do you interview for things? How do you just do all of these things you don't actually get from classes? So I would, I guess, if I were going to suggest something, it would be the Career Center, right? And go there early and start figuring out what things outside of class you might need for whatever career you might want in the future.
Awesome. Dr. Ghosh?
So I think when I was an undergrad, we kind of had to figure out most things on our own. What I have found particularly interesting on our campus is we do offer a lot of professional development workshops, what Eric was talking about, to develop soft skills. I would contact the STEM Center. I would find out what resources we have, because they will tell you so many things that you had no idea. UROC does the summer schools. UROC also has opportunities throughout the year where they will give you feedback on letters you're writing, or CVs, or cover letters. I am really impressed with how much on this campus has available on ways for you to find out, what do I do next? How do I apply for a job? Can I even apply for a job? When can I apply for a job? There are opportunities to apply for internships, which I strongly recommend. Summers are no longer for vacation. It's kind of fun to go out there and learn new skills and make new contacts. If you are doing research in a lab, that is a very good starting point, because there immediately you have access to this group of people who've gone through what you're going through now, and they will have probably more suggestions than you would like of what you could do next. Start early though, don't save it for your senior year. Some of these things, if you want to go to graduate school, the process starts a year ahead. You don't want to hear that, oh, oops, you just missed a deadline, or yeah, if only you had come a month before. So I think when you start your junior year, that is a good time to sit down with yourself and just say, what do I want to do? And if you don't know what you want to do, I didn't, go talk to how many other people you can think of, saying, I don't know what I want to do. Where should I start? The advisors in the schools, the academic advisors are also good resources. You have many people, and nobody will say, that's not my problem, go away. If they don't know what to tell you, they will point out, put you in touch with someone else. Just make a start. And it's totally okay for the start to be, I'm going to graduate in 2 years. I have no idea what to do next. What should I prepare for? Just take that step. And then you will have all the information that you need, a lot that you will not need, a lot of it. Just start early, and let us, give you any help that we can.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Dr. Bennett? You're muted.
I don't have a lot to add here. I'll just say that when I started as an undergrad, I was woefully unprepared and unknowledgeable about the resources my campus had for these kinds of things. It ended up taking me 5 years to graduate, and I oscillated between a lot of majors. And part of it's because I just didn't know who to talk to, and I was hitting dead ends and figuring out what to do. And I think UC Merced has a lot of resources for helping with that. And just using myself as an example, and I think this is mostly already said, was I actually started talking to academic advisors a lot. And I started talking to them in different schools as I was trying to search where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do with myself. And I got a lot of really great advice on the kinds of classes I could take and how it made me most flexible, and possibly what I could do with my degree once I left. And I don't know if that was their job per se, but they were really great career counselors in a lot of ways, I think, because they were helping me acquire skills and figure out what I could do with that. Along the same lines, I did eventually get involved in research around my 5th year, which was not optimal, but it really opened up a lot of doors and changed things for me. And I wish I had been talking to professors along the way. And at UC Merced, I found that students are really, really pretty interactive and great at sort of approaching professors to talk about opportunities and things they could do in their areas. So if you're taking, say, a class in some area of biology or chemistry or physics, that professor might have some ideas that they could share with you, even just in a passing conversation after class. I think just interacting with those people who they're kind of your front line with how you interface with the university. They can give you a lot of information, even if it's not obvious. And I wish I had had that and thought about that and had that kind of idea earlier in my undergrad programming.
Awesome, thank you. And I know you all touched upon, when students approach you for letters of recommendations, and maybe like even a letter of reference or a reference for a call or interview or, graduate program as well. And so what do you look for if a student were to approach you like, hey, doctor, please write me a letter of recommendation? And I think you all touched upon, how to establish those connections with faculty so that way you have that stronger letter. But what would your advice be for a student who's just kind of, I need a letter of recommendation. Where do I start and how do I approach you? And what advice would you give to kind of give you that time frame as well? So advice. So I'll go ahead and have Dr. Menke go first.
So I'm not really sure. So when students ask me, I will usually tell them, or even when they don't ask, sometimes like for upper division classes, I'll just kind of preface this and tell everybody that I won't write letters unless I can write a good one. And it's hard for me to write a good letter if I don't know you. And what that usually means is you have either worked in my lab or we've spent a lot of time together in kind of a smaller class. And so usually I need to know the student better than just a name and a letter on a piece of paper. Right? If my letter is, oh, they took this class from me and they got an A, that's not the kind of letter that's going to get you into anything. And so, yeah, in the student's best interest and in my best interest, it's best if I can write a letter where I actually know you. I'm a little bit fortunate because I usually teach an upper division lab once a year. And so I get to interact with most of this junior and senior chemistry students quite a bit. And so that helps a lot. But yeah, if I've had students from like my general chemistry class ask, I'm like, I don't even know what to say. I can't write a 3-sentence recommendation letter. That won't carry any weight at all. So yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh.
There is a trick I learned from my advisors that I tell the students. So first of all, I understand everyone asks for 3 or so many reference letters. And if you've done research, which I hope you do, you have one person there. And then invariably, at least 1 or 2 end up being people who you've taken classes with and may not have spent a lot of time with. So I think I am a little bit more flexible that way. I try to help out. So what I ask is when students email me saying that, Professor, I took this class with you, I got an A, do you remember me? I usually say, I don't remember what I had for breakfast, so probably not. But I ask them, send me the CV that you are submitting with this application or the resume or your statement of purpose or something. And then I read that and I feel like, I do look them up. I look up their grades and remind myself who they were, look at their pictures, not in a creepy way, just to remember your face. Of course, now I'll have to ask for a voice recording. So I kind of go back and figure out how they did. And I write about that. And then I like to say that since taking my class, so-and-so has done research in Professor X's lab, and they've been working on this, which is kind of interesting. And, Professor X will know more about the research. So I beef up your letter a little bit. I'm not being dishonest, but it's a way of writing a letter that seems like what I've taught you, and that has gone on to further things. It just adds a little bit more. I do that. It's not as strong a letter as if you had done research with me. That's never going to be the case. But I found that this thing of people asking for several references, you end up having one person who you've just taken a class with. And I feel like I do my best. As an undergrad, I think people reading the letters take that into account, that has to be one. So if you can, provide them with material, help us write a good letter. Tell us a bit more than just the grade you took. That way we can build on that.
Thank you. Dr. Bennett?
Yeah, I think that's all really great advice. I really want to strongly encourage students to make sustained personal interactions with it. I keep saying this, but it really makes a big difference, because if you don't know a student and they really want a letter from you and you might be their last option, um, it's going to be so much better for you and the quality of that letter and what it does, the work it does for you, if the professor knows you. Because honestly and frankly, it's kind of like pulling teeth sometimes to write a letter for someone I don't know. Even though I know they've done really well and they probably deserve the letter, it becomes a creative writing exercise potentially, and it's not ideal, and it doesn't really communicate something personal, which I think are the most impactful letters that can be written. And I think, putting together resources such as your CV that you can help your letter writer is very valuable. And my classes also have assignments that speak a lot to your ability. And if I'm writing you a letter, I often go back to look at that. So put care into everything you produce in a class if you think it's going to be a letter writer, because that's material that can enhance a letter and demonstrate certain skills, whether it's writing or lab-based. And then along those lines, work ahead of your deadline. There's sort of two sides of that. So one is making sure you give a faculty or a professor, whoever's writing your letter, time to work on it, but also don't ask for it too early, because a lot of us work on deadlines. If you're asking for it months in advance, you might not get it, because a lot of times you apply to something and we'll get a letter that says it's time for us to submit it, and that's probably when we'll finalize that letter. So just be mindful of the time and try not to do it in advance in a way that doesn't overburden the letter writer. That way they'll give you a better, more thoughtful letter, and etc.
Awesome. And then my question, and I know we're almost at the 11:45 mark. So how would you describe your teaching style? So I'll go ahead and have Dr. Menke go first.
I guess my teaching style is bad. That's probably the adjective I would choose. No, I like to think of my role as a teacher very similar to that of a professional or a trainer in a gym. I'm there to motivate you, to suggest what to do, make sure that you have the right form and aren't hurting yourself. But really, you're the one that has to lift the weights or get on the treadmill, and so I guess that's how I would describe it.
Awesome. Dr. Ghosh?
I think I would describe my teaching style as informal. I guess I don't see myself as a trainer, but that could just be, how people perceive themselves differently. I tell the students that I'm not the enemy here. I'm not here to fail you. If most of you do really badly in my class, that means I did a bad job. So it's in my interest to get you to the point where you can do well. In whatever I do, my exams are tough, but I'm always fair. So, I try to point out to students that if everybody does badly, that just means the medium of the grade was lower. So I try to be motivational and informal, and I really encourage students to communicate with me by email, by showing up to my office, whatever means they have. This is a very important part of the job I do on campus. So you deserve my time to come and ask me questions. And for example, I don't have traditional office hours. I found the 2 hours I set aside, it doesn't work for everyone when I'm teaching a 100+ class. So I tell my students, you email me when you have time and we'll set aside. So I make appointments. I do it that way. And so I'm here to help you, but you have to take the first step and ask me, because I don't want to put anybody on the spot. So yeah.
And Dr. Bennett?
I find that to be a really hard question to answer, actually. So I trained as a high school teacher and taught for a year. And in that environment, students can't fail, right? Like the whole idea is we encourage students to, it's a totally different thing where we have to really invest in the students and make sure they succeed. And failing students are really kind of a crisis for their futures. And that's not necessarily the case in undergrad per se, but I carried a lot of that forward with me. So I would describe my teaching as highly personal, and I I shouldn't do this, but I tend to suffer all the bad grades that students get in my class, or if they're not putting in the effort, particularly if they're not participating or coming to lecture, I tend to take that very personally. In the same sense, when I lecture, I like to get very involved in the information and communicate my personal connections with it and as much as possible. As far as strategically how I teach, I try to have interactive and diversified classes where we take time to make sure students are engaging with us in the conversation that's going on and the knowledge through discussion. This, of course, becomes very hard as I've started to adopt much larger classes, and carrying those things as constantly making me reevaluate how I approach those things. But as far as assignments go, I have really I've been really trying to build in evaluative mechanisms, learning strategies that back away from pure exams and things like that, so that students have a lot of ways to develop skill sets and communicate knowledge where it's not always possible in an exam. So I guess personal and dynamic, those are two words I would use to describe my teaching strategies and style.
Awesome, thank you. And so I know I want to give some time if there's some questions and answers. So participants, if you have some questions that were already addressed, you can drop it in the chat box and then we can go ahead and ask that. I do want to leave a couple of minutes of spare just in case if our faculty members need to run off and teach their classes as well. So just as a reminder, if you have a question that you would like to hear from our faculty, you can go ahead and type it in the chat and then we'll go ahead and see. And I'll make sure, Erica, I know you're my co-host, to make sure I activated the chat appropriately. And I think it's activated on our end too. So again, if you have a question, a comment, or Erica, if there was one addressed to you specifically. Oh, I think there's one coming in here. So one question that we have, what are some tips to stay connected, involved right now during distance learning? And so if anybody wants to navigate that question.
I'll just say there's still office hours, and I have a class that I'm co-instructing, and we have three TAs. Go to them. If you have to make up a question, just go and interact with those faculty, those people in your classes as much as possible. I think I can't speak to this, but I think the campus has a lot of interactive programs they're doing to try to get undergrads to connect with each other. Oh, sorry. I know it's painful to find yourself in more and more Zoom meetings, but try to find a moment where you can make those connections and definitely get connected with your classes as much as possible.
Awesome. Dr. Menke or Dr. Ghosh?
I think it's a good question because, and there are few answers because we are all sort of suffering through it. One of my undergrads who does research with me, she said that they used to sit and, do homework together and all of that. So they found a time and they all kind of open up Zoom like this and just sit and do their stuff and talk. It was awkward at first, but they've kind of gotten used to it. So it's like they form their virtual group and they do homework together, which I thought is a really good idea. If that works for you, you should try that. Again, yeah, it is a little bit awkward, but we do the best we can. TAs are, I think, a really good resource. They are doing office hours. So yes, attend those. And again, just get in touch when you have any specific issues that you want to work through. And we will either point you to resources, or we'll find out who those resources are. We'll help you in any way we can. Let us know.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Dr. Menke, anything?
So this is a hard question for me because I feel like I'm one of those few people that's actually done really well in this environment. I guess maybe I'm more introverted than I used to think I was, but I guess maybe I like nothing more than sitting in a small room with my lights off, listening to music and not having to talk to anybody in the universe. And so I actually like that I am not as connected and involved with people as I used to have to be. Although I think there are also negatives to that. I think it's actually starting to get a little unhealthy that I'm not interacting with people enough. But try to come up with I think there are some creative things that you can do with Zoom that people don't maybe think of. Like, for example, I got together with some people and we streamed Netflix over Zoom and basically watched a movie together, even though we weren't together, right? And so I think that you can do things through the internet that maybe even a couple of years ago you couldn't. So I think we're at least in an age where it's easier than it would have been, even though it's still not easy. But there are a lot of other tools. There's some things Zoom is good at, and there's some things it's not good for. So, you know, join Discords where you can talk to people. Try to participate, I guess, in the dens that are being created. I don't know how well that's going, but I know people are trying to put stuff together to help people stay involved. And so try to find those and do those.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Menke. And I know, Dr. Bennett, you do have the class to teach, so feel free if at any moment you do need to leave. So thank you, Dr. Bennett.
I do have to go, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome. Any other questions from our participants?
I just wanted to add, you know, about this whole pandemic and remote thing is also keep in mind, I mean, at least this is what I tell myself, this is going to get over. Things will get better. This is not the new permanent. It's just the current situation. So I keep that in mind to keep myself saying I will be able to, this will go away someday, very soon, let's hope.
Yes, definitely keeping us uplifted, knowing that this is temporary, and hopefully we'll all be reunited too. I know for us, you know, trying to connect and having those meetings and connecting with our colleagues that we haven't seen in person in a while and trying to have a conversation, if even it's a quick lunch, perhaps. I think for our students too, we definitely encourage you. There's so many virtual events that are going on campus, lots of great resources that are virtual, are doing Zoom or other avenues for remote learning as well. So we definitely encourage you. And you're probably getting bombarded with lots of emails from different offices, but it's really important to check your UC Merced email and definitely kind of filter through those happening emails, other campus announcements as well, because there are so many great resources that we have available. If you go through your CAT Life as well, you can definitely see the different events, calendar of events that are on there. The UC Merced main page will have an events calendar. So I think that's definitely good. To try to get involved too and connect with people. If you feel like maybe I haven't connected with somebody in a while, maybe it's a good time. Let me go see what's out there. So that way, find that joy, that passion. There's still clubs and organizations that are still meeting as well. So take that time to filter through your emails, read those emails, and see what's out there that kind of grabs your attention. So that way you can be involved as well and have that interaction with your peers, with faculty members, other departments as well. And so I know we're at the 11:55 mark. And I think to my faculty panel, I really appreciate you taking the time today to interact with us, have those questions as well. And if there's any last minute words or anything that maybe we haven't thought about that you would like to add. And I think even for our staff members that are here, so John, Erica, any other last words of encouragement for our students?
For myself as an academic coach, to give Dr. Menke and Ghosh a moment to answer this important question, I was very pleasantly affected by the comments that every faculty participant said aligns with the things that I'm coaching students through who are experiencing probation, standing, academic difficulty, or life challenges to help them succeed in their degree. And I do, even the words that Dr. Menke mentioned, I've had a couple of conversations generally around I think I enjoyed a conversation about the Chem Center or something, but it's very aligned with the pieces of the conversation that students are coming to me with about going to office hours, about when to approach someone for a recommendation letter. I'd tell them if they don't know you, they can't write a good letter for you, but they need to get to know you. Go to office hours. Taking advantage of all the resources that are out there. For myself as a first generation college student who didn't know what they were doing, college is a difficult process, so you shouldn't have to go it alone. So I just wanted to thank the faculty for for promoting the ideas that I'm also promoting, because I know that's what you want to see from students and the expectations are there. So yes, everything they said, it's true.
I do want to add, John, that when you said it's a difficult process, I totally agree that it's difficult and it's a process. And it's really good that you stress that. It's college is not like a thing that you just do right. It's a process.
It's supposed to be hard. The UC
Yes.
does not want to graduate doctors who are not going to be being able to treat patients, right? Or understand the environment and the changes that are occurring right now. So it's supposed to be rigorous, but you don't have to go it alone. And the differences between high school and college that several of you had mentioned as well are spot on. It's exactly that, plus more. So you're adjusting to this new environment. Faculty have laid out expectations of what that learning environment is supposed to be like and what your responsibility is that. So own it. Own your degree. It's your education. Make something out of it. Add value with the research and the opportunities that Marisela mentioned that are out there. They are out there. It's up to you.
So I guess one last thing I would say that I don't think we touched on, but is kind of related to what John was saying, is so college is hard, but it's especially hard right now. But I think that there are two ways that you can approach that, right? You can be very defeatist about it and just be like, oh, whatever, and let it get to you, or you can embrace it and recognize that it's difficult, but you can actually learn more about yourself from it. But that's really hard, right? Most people don't have that ability to just naturally like, oh, this is awesome. I hate being in pain. But yeah, we do have other resources that can help with that, right? Like mental health professionals on campus. And so knowing those resources and overcoming whatever fear or concern you have about using those resources, I think is really important. I know that, right, everybody's willing to go to a doctor, but it's surprising how many people aren't willing to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Right? Somehow our physical well-being is super easy to take care of, but our mental well-being is not. And so I think being able to overcome that and kind of embrace the challenge that we're currently in and becoming more because of it, I think is going to be really long-term good for people.
Thank you. Well, I know we're already at the lunchtime mark too, and I definitely want to give time to our faculty, but again, I can't stress enough how appreciative we are for you all taking the time today to interact with our students. We will have this seminar workshop on our website on ns-advising.ucmerced.edu, and so our goal is that we will have this uploaded on our website by Friday. I'll have our student assistants work on that for me. So again, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. For our student participants, we will have another panel as well at 2 p.m. With our juniors and seniors. So there are representatives from each of our 5 majors in the School of Natural Sciences. So again, that will be at 2 p.m. You probably got a blast from me today with the flyer, with the information that has the Zoom link. So if you can join us at 2, we'll have another great panel as well with our student representatives. So thank you so much. And with that, I will conclude our session. Thank you, Dr. Menke. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. And thank you, Dr. Bennett, who's off teaching now. Bye.
Thank you.